Once again, my special bracelet seems to have disappeared, and I suspect my mother-in-law may have taken it without permission. Don't be upset. My husband said, it's a gift from Mom. Just try to accept it. I often notice that my mother-in-law takes my things without asking, and my husband always supports her. I feel frustrated because he doesn't stand up for me. It's tough for me. Then something terrible happened. Someone stole my husband's favorite fancy car. I know who did it. My name is Margot, and I'm 28 years old. My happy life with my husband Jason started to fall apart about a year after we got married. We both have jobs, but I finish work earlier, so I go home and start making dinner. That day, while waiting for my husband to come home, he surprised me with some big news. Mom's coming to stay with us from next week onwards. Wait, really? She's staying overnight. I couldn't believe it. My husband let out a big sigh. No, she's not just staying overnight. She's moving in. Moving in like living with us? I asked, trying to understand. Yeah, exactly. Since Dad passed away, Mom's been on her own. She's getting older, and it's tough for her, my husband explained. Wait a minute, you can't just decide this without talking to me. We have our own lives too. Can't you give me some time to think about it? I pleaded, but my husband just smiled and shrugged it off. It's okay. Mom wants to feel safe. She just wants to stay with us. I understand she might feel lonely and scared, but you made this big decision without asking me. Couldn't you have at least talked to me about it? Why do I have to tell you everything? She's my mom, he argued back. That's exactly it. She's your mom. At mine, I have to change everything because of this. What are you so upset about anyway? It's decided. Just deal with it. I argued back. Wait. I called out, but my husband ignored me and left the room, leaving me feeling frustrated. How could he decide we're all going to live together without even talking to me about it? I still have to adjust, no matter what. Jason doesn't help out around the house and acts like it's no big deal because she's his mom. We've tried talking about it, but he just says it's done and shuts down the conversation. As expected, the next week, his mom, my mother-in-law, showed up at her house like it was planned. If she was a normal person, I wouldn't mind living together, but every time I see her, she says mean things and treats me badly. That's why I avoid going to her house unless I have to. But now, suddenly, we're supposed to live together. As I expected, my mother-in-law started criticizing me from the very first day. Margot, did you know I was coming today? There's trash in the corner, she scolded.
I'm sorry.
I was working and didn't have time to clean, I explained. Excuses. Couldn't you have cleaned up after work? But then I wouldn't have time to make dinner. Oh, come on. Stop arguing back. How do you even handle being Ian's wife? Be more efficient.
I'm sorry, I stuttered.
Just 10 minutes in our house and it's already like this. I'm really worried about what's going to happen next. From that day on, my mother-in-law's controlling behavior got worse, and it stressed me out constantly. Then one day, I came home from work, and my mother-in-law greeted me with a big smile, saying, "Welcome home." I usually don't get such a warm welcome, so it felt strange. Then I noticed something shiny around her neck. Wait, is that my necklace? It looked just like mine. Feeling uneasy, I hurried to my room and checked my jewelry box. My suspicion was right. I went straight to the living room and confronted my mother-in-law, who was sitting there calmly. That necklace, it's mine, isn't it? I accused. Oh, we finally notice. It looks good on me, doesn't it? She replied shamelessly. What are you talking about? Stop using my things without asking. What's the big deal? It's not like it's going to disappear or anything. But that's not the issue here. Stop complaining and get dinner ready. Jason will be home soon. Even while I was getting dinner ready, my mother-in-law kept interfering, making me more and more stressed. That night, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to my husband. Hey, Jason, can we talk? What's on your mind? Today, I found your mother wearing my necklace without asking. Oh, so you're saying she went into my room, opened my jewelry box, and basically took it? Isn't that a bit of an exaggeration? How am I exaggerating? Come on, I'm sure Mom didn't mean any harm. I felt angry that my husband was taking his mother's side. Trying to stay calm, I continued to explain. So you're saying it's fine to just go into someone's room without asking and take their things? A normal person would at least apologize. Well, Mom probably just saw something she liked and took it. But that's not the point, Jason. You need to talk to her. What? Me? Your mother disrespects me. Telling her off won't do anything. So you, her son, need to do it.
Ok, fine.
I'll handle it. All right. Despite my insistence, it seemed my husband forgot about it. By the next day, I shot him a few angry looks, but he never confronted his mother. Since then, my mother-in-law started using my things without asking, basically borrowing them without permission. No matter how much I complained, she didn't listen. And since there are no locks on the doors in this house, telling her off would be pointless unless she changes her ways. If this keeps happening, I'll end up losing my belongings. I have to stop my mother-in-law's behavior. I need to come up with some sort of plan. Then one day, something happened that I absolutely couldn't forgive. It's missing. How could this happen? Today, I had plans to meet up with a friend and wanted to wear my late mother's bracelet for the occasion. It's a precious item, so I never keep it in the jewelry box. Instead, it's hidden deep in my desk drawer, and yet it's gone. The only person who could have taken it is my mother-in-law. When I confronted her firmly, she casually admits to taking it. Of that bracelet. I just borrowed it. Then give it back right now. I need it. I can't do that. Why not? Because I sold it. What? You stole it? Is this some kind of joke? Who sells someone else's stuff? Though shaken, I stood my ground. Stop kidding around. Give it back now. I'm not kidding. By the way, most of the things I've borrowed from you, I sold those too. What? What were you thinking? As I argued with my mother-in-law, my husband Jason, who had just woken up, joined us. Jason, listen to this. Quickly I explained the situation. Your mom sold my bracelet, the one that belonged to my late mom. Plus, she's been selling off most of the things she's borrowed from me without asking. Mom, is this true? Faced with the question, my mother-in-law stuck out her tongue and teased. Well, I'm on a fixed income, you know. I don't want to be a burden, but I can't make ends meet without a little extra cash. You've got to be joking. Who gave you the right? Don't get so upset. I didn't mean any harm. If you meant no harm, you wouldn't be selling and taking other people's things. That's because, but I interrupted her. Where did you sell it? Get it back right now. Just then, my husband yelled, enough is enough. He wasn't looking at his mom, though. He was glaring at me. Confused, I asked him, why are you yelling at me, Jason? Your mom took my bracelet without asking. Be quiet. I did it for Mom. Stop complaining. For Mom? Seriously? Why should I give up my precious things for her? Because it makes Mom happy. She's your mother-in-law. Show some respect. Just do as you're told. I couldn't handle it anymore. Not his mom stealing from me and not Jason taking her side. I couldn't live like this anymore. Driven by growing anger, I shouted, that's it. If you won't give it back, let's get a divorce. Stop joking about divorce. I'm not joking. I'm serious. Fine, whatever. I'll get the divorce papers today. Fine, if that's what you want. I'm okay with it. As we argued, I noticed a satisfied look on his mom's face. She never liked me. Her real goal was probably to get rid of me and have this house for herself and her son. That night, my husband came home with divorce papers filled out. After signing them, I started packing. I decided to wait for the right moment to leave. The next day, during my work break, I saw multiple missed calls from my sister Miriam, who lived nearby. Something must have happened. I called her back, and she told me shocking news. Wait, Miriam, is that true? It is, no doubt about it. It's not common around here, but why? I took a photo, so I'll send it. Make sure to check it on your end. Is this okay? Got it. After hanging up, my sister sent the photo. It was undeniable evidence that could expose my mother-in-law. When I got home and was calmly making dinner, my husband Jason rushed in, looking worried. Margot, this is serious. What happened? My prize car, is gone. Wow, that's serious. Why aren't you more worried? You know how much that car means to me.
Ido.
It's the car I've been dreaming of since. I was single and I finally bought it last year. Remember exactly, so be more concerned. We're still paying off the loan for it. Where could it have gone? Please don't tell me. Margot, did you take it? Of course not. I have my own car and I know you'd be furious if I took yours. But then where? I glanced at my mother-in-law and she quickly looked away. That confirmed my suspicion. Jason, I think your mom knows something. What? Why would mom know? I asked directly, and my mother-in-law's face turned pale. What are you talking about, Margot? How is mom involved? Well, I got a call from Miriam today. Miriam? She happened to be out shopping and saw your mom driving your car. What? That car is pretty unique, being a foreign model and blue. It's quite noticeable around here. Miriam even recognized the license plate. Wait, what's happening here? Jason, now visibly angry, confronted his mother. Mother, what did you do with the car? Mother-in-law started making excuses. No, Jason, I just borrowed the car for a bit. Borrowed? Seriously? I've told you so many times not to touch that car. I'm sorry, but I really wanted to drive it. What on earth did you do with the car then? Did you leave it somewhere? No, not exactly, but I did leave the keys in the ignition. Someone from the neighborhood might have taken it. Stolen? Seriously? I swear I drove the car all the way home. I'm not lying. I showed my mother-in-law a photo to prove my point. Is this why you're lying? Did you wreck the car like this? I showed her a photo from my sister Miriam. It clearly showed my mother-in-law driving a badly damaged luxury car. My sister sent this just in case. You took Jason's car and wrecked it so badly that you couldn't drive it back, didn't you? No, that's not what happened. Where's the car anyway? And if someone stole it from the neighborhood, someone would have noticed, right? My husband started shaking next to me, his voice full of anger as he yelled at his mother with a fierce look. Are you serious? You wrecked my car and then what? Give it back now. Calm down, Jason. How can I stay calm? You're paying for the repairs. That's impossible. I've already sold the car. Sold it? That's not possible. The car is in my name. I found a dealer who said they'd buy any car. They said I could even sell it on behalf of someone else. So, I sold it for $4,000. $4,000? The luxury car my husband bought would easily go for hundreds of thousands, even if sold now. My mother-in-law got tricked by some shady dealer who didn't know the car's value and got ripped off. When my husband found out, he was furious and yelled at his mom like never before. You've got to be kidding me. Do you realize how much that car meant to me? I'm sorry, Jason. I'll give you back the $4,000, so please forgive me. $4,000 isn't even close to enough. Get out. My husband forcefully kicked his mother out and locked the door. He turned to me defeated and muttered, I never thought mom could cause so much trouble. I'm sorry for not supporting you earlier. Finally, you understand. Don't worry. Now that she's gone, I'm over it. Let's move forward happily together. No, we won't. What? Why not? I want a divorce, instantly. His face turned pale, and he clung to me. Wait a second. I already kicked Mom out. Why divorce now? Don't you understand? I'm done with you too. My decision to divorce stands. I don't want to fix things anymore. You've taken your mom's side too many times. It's not fair. You're being too harsh. Harsh? That's rich coming from you. You didn't lift a finger when I needed support. You're so selfish. I hate you just as much as I hate your mother. My feelings won't change. Margot, calm down. Stop it. This all happened because you chose to live with her. Think about that. I'll never forgive you. What about the car you got coming to you? You deserve it. What? You feel that way? Good. I hope you struggle with double the mortgage and car payments. You deserve the consequences. You'll have to deal with it, you son of a. I left him with those words and grabbed my packed bags. On my way out, I headed straight to City Hall to file for divorce. I deleted all his contact info and cut ties completely. Later, I demanded compensation from my mother-in-law for selling my belongings without my permission. She reluctantly started working with demands for car payments from her son. She's likely working for the rest of her life. My husband is left with house and car loans, and his life has changed significantly. He no longer goes on stress-relieving drives, spending his days off confined to the house. A hopeless case, both mother and son. Karma's a real thing. Serves you right. After all this, I moved to an apartment near my workplace. Now that I'm single again, I have more financial freedom, and life is much more peaceful. Since it's my day off, maybe I'll take a drive to the beach today. This is what freedom feels like. I plan to enjoy my new life to the fullest.
You know, Lauren's the only reason this family stays together, Evelyn said, her voice sharp and certain as she passed the mashed potatoes across the table. I glanced up from my plate, biting back the retort forming on my lips. Across the table, Lauren flashed her perfect smile, basking in the praise like it was her birthright. Mom, that's not true, David said quietly, breaking the tension only slightly. Oh, David, Evelyn scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. You don't see it because you don't want to. Lauren's always the one keeping the peace, making sure we stay close. Natalie's fine, but she's not as involved. Her words stung, but they didn't surprise me. This had been the narrative for as long as I could remember. Lauren was the glue, the peacemaker, the family's shining star. And me? I was just the dutiful daughter-in-law, always fine, but never enough. My name is Natalie, and I've been married to David for 8 years. From the moment I joined his family, I knew I was stepping into a dynamic where I'd always be second best. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, adored her daughter Lauren with a ferocity that bordered on blindness. Lauren could do no wrong, and I was tolerated. It wasn't that I didn't try. I cooked meals, hosted family gatherings, and stepped in whenever there was a crisis. But no matter what I did, Evelyn's praise always found its way back to Lauren. If I cleaned up after a chaotic family dinner, Evelyn would thank Lauren for organizing the evening. If I resolved a last-minute problem, Evelyn would say, "That's just Lauren's influence, keeping everything in order." At first, I tried to win her approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, she'd see my worth. But as the years went on, I realized that Evelyn's biases weren't about me. They were about her own need to put Lauren on a pedestal. The dinner dragged on, with Evelyn's comments cutting deeper as the evening progressed. "Natalie's always so quiet," she said at one point, smiling at Lauren. "You're the one who brings the energy to this family." I smiled politely, my hands clenched under the table. David gave me a small, apologetic glance, but he didn't say much. He rarely did when it came to his mother's favoritism. By the time dessert was served, I'd retreated into my own thoughts. I didn't need Evelyn's validation, I reminded myself. I'd learned to find strength in my actions, not her words. Still, as I cleared the plates and watched Lauren laugh with Evelyn, a part of me couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for the truth to surface, for Evelyn to see who was really holding this family together. Later that night, as David and I drove home, the silence in the car was thick. He kept glancing at me, probably trying to gauge my mood, but I didn't give him much to work with. Finally, he broke the quiet. "I'm sorry about my mom," he said, his voice low. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. "Why are you apologizing for something she does every time we see her?" "I don't know," he admitted, gripping the wheel tighter. "I guess I feel like I should say something, but I never know how to make it better." "David, it's not your fault," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Your mom has always made it clear who she thinks holds this family together, and it's not me. Nothing you say is going to change that." He frowned but didn't argue. That was the thing about David. He hated conflict, especially when it came to his mom. When we got home, I went straight to the kitchen and started putting away leftovers from the dinner I'd prepared before we left. Cooking had always been my way of unwinding, a small act of control in a world that often felt chaotic. David leaned against the doorway, watching me. "You know she doesn't mean it, right? She just gets caught up in her idea of Lauren." I turned to face him, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's not just about Lauren, David. It's about the fact that no matter what I do, your mom refuses to see it. I work hard for this family. I cook, I clean, I make sure we're all taken care of, and she acts like it doesn't even matter." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Natalie. I see it, and I appreciate everything you do." "Then why don't you say something to her?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He hesitated, then shrugged. "Because I don't think she'll listen, and honestly, I don't want to start a fight that won't go anywhere." I shook my head, turning back to the counter. "It's fine," I said, though it was anything but. "I don't need her approval. I'll just keep doing what I do, and eventually, the truth will speak for itself." As I cleaned up the kitchen that night, I thought about Evelyn's words and Lauren's smug smile. They didn't know half of what I did to keep this family afloat, financially, emotionally, and in every other way that mattered. But I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to prove it to them. Sooner or later, life would show them the truth. And when it did, I would be ready. A few weeks later, the cracks in the family's facade began to show. It started subtly, Evelyn mentioning how money seemed tighter than usual, Lauren complaining about a canceled spa trip. At first, I thought it was just normal ups and downs, but soon it became clear that something more serious was going on. One evening, David came home looking more stressed than I'd seen him in years. He dropped his bag by the door and sat heavily at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting across from him. "It's my mom," he said, rubbing his temples. "She called today, asking if we could lend her some money. Apparently, Lauren borrowed a significant amount from her, and now she's struggling to cover her bills." I blinked, stunned. "Wait, Lauren borrowed money? For what?" He sighed. "Something about helping a friend start a business. It didn't work out, and now my mom's footing the bill." The revelation didn't surprise me. Lauren had always been impulsive, leaping into ventures without thinking them through, confident that someone else would clean up the mess. Usually that someone was Evelyn, who never hesitated to come to Lauren's rescue. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her we'd think about it," David replied. "But Natalie, I know we can't just hand over money like that. Things are tight for us, too." I nodded, already mentally calculating our budget. Between the mortgage, groceries, and the small savings we were trying to build, there wasn't much room for generosity. Over the next few days, Evelyn's requests became more frequent and urgent. She called David almost daily, her tone growing more desperate each time. "David, you know how much I've done for this family," she said during one call, her voice trembling. "If you and Natalie could just help out this once, it would mean so much." David relayed the conversations to me. clearly torn between wanting to help his mom and knowing we couldn't afford to. "What do you think we should do?" he asked one night as we lay in bed. I stared at the ceiling, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "We can't give her money, David. Not when we're barely managing ourselves. But maybe there's another way to help." "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said slowly, "we step in and start handling things, quietly. If Evelyn's too proud to admit she's overwhelmed and Lauren's not stepping up, then maybe it's time someone else does." He frowned but didn't argue. "If anyone can figure it out, it's you," he said. As I lay awake that night, I began formulating a plan. Evelyn's blind faith in Lauren had led her to this mess, but I wasn't going to let her spiral further into trouble. Not for her sake, but for the family's. It was time to take action, even if it meant staying in the shadows. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a calculator, poring over every detail of our finances. If I was going to step in, I needed to know exactly what we could spare, if anything. David sat across from me sipping his coffee. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, watching me flip through bank statements. "I'm not going to hand your mom cash," I said firmly, "but if we can restructure some of her bills or find a way to reduce her expenses, it might help. She's in this mess because she won't admit she's struggling, and Lauren isn't going to do anything about it." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I hate that it's come to this. She shouldn't have to rely on you." "She doesn't have to," I replied, glancing up at him. "But someone needs to fix this before it gets worse." I started by contacting a financial consultant I knew from work. Over the next few days, I gathered information about Evelyn's debts, her monthly expenses, and the loans she'd taken on for Lauren's failed business ventures. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Credit card balances maxed out, overdue utility bills, and a looming mortgage payment she couldn't cover. Through it all, Evelyn remained oblivious to my involvement. I didn't tell her about the hours I spent negotiating lower interest rates on her loans, or finding payment plans that wouldn't drown her further in debt. David offered to talk to her, but I told him not to. "She won't take it seriously if it comes from you," I said. "And if she finds out I'm involved, she'll reject the help out of pride." He didn't argue, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. Meanwhile, Lauren remained conspicuously absent. Evelyn continued to sing her praises at family gatherings, saying things like, "Lauren's so stressed these days. She's doing so much for everyone." I bit my tongue every time, knowing full well that Lauren wasn't lifting a finger to fix the mess she'd created. The weight of it all was exhausting. Between managing our household, handling Evelyn's financial crisis, and keeping up appearances at family dinners, I felt like I was juggling 1,000 plates. But I refused to let it show. Evelyn didn't need to know how hard I was working to keep her afloat, and Lauren certainly didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing I was cleaning up after her. One night, as David and I sat on the couch after another long day, he turned to me and said, "You're incredible, you know that?" I smiled faintly, too tired to argue. "Let's just hope it works," I said. "It will," he replied, squeezing my hand. "Because you're the one holding everything together, even if no one else sees it yet." 2 weeks later, I started to see the results of my work. Evelyn's overdue bills were now manageable, her mortgage payments had been adjusted, and her interest rates were significantly lower. The changes weren't monumental, but they were enough to keep her afloat. Despite the progress, Evelyn's praise for Lauren remained constant. "Lauren's been such a rock for me," she said one evening over dinner. "She always knows just what to say to keep me calm." I clenched my jaw, forcing a tight smile. "That's great, Evelyn. I'm glad she's been there for you." David gave me a sympathetic look, but he stayed quiet. It wasn't worth starting a fight, not when Evelyn was so blinded by her perception of Lauren. The final straw came when I overheard a phone call between Evelyn and Lauren. I'd stopped by Evelyn's house to drop off some paperwork related to her new payment plans. As I walked up the driveway, I heard her voice through the open window. "Don't worry about it, Lauren," she said, her tone warm and reassuring. "I'll figure it out. You've already done so much for this family." I froze. my stomach twisting. Done so much? Lauren hadn't done a thing except create the financial mess I'd been working tirelessly to fix. When I knocked on the door, Evelyn greeted me with her usual strained politeness. "Natalie, what a surprise," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I just wanted to drop these off," I said, handing her the folder. "They're the finalized payment schedules for your bills. Everything should be in order now." She glanced at the papers briefly, then set them aside without much acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said almost dismissively, "but you didn't have to go to so much trouble." "It wasn't any trouble," I replied evenly, though my chest ached at her indifference. As I drove home, the frustration boiled over. I'd spent weeks fixing Evelyn's finances, sacrificing my time and energy, all while she continued to heap credit on Lauren. David found me in the kitchen later that night, furiously scrubbing a pan. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched across his face. "She doesn't even care," I said, my voice shaking. "I've done everything to help her, and all she can talk about is how amazing Lauren is." He sighed, wrapping his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Natalie. She'll see the truth eventually. People like Evelyn can't ignore the facts forever." I leaned into him, letting the tears I'd been holding back finally fall. "She'd better," I said quietly, "because I'm done letting her take me for granted." After that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with Evelyn or try to convince her of my worth. Instead, I would focus on finishing what I started. The truth would come out in its own time, and when it did, there would be no denying what I had done for this family. Over the next few weeks, I continued to manage Evelyn's finances, streamlining her payments and negotiating better terms with creditors. Every improvement I made strengthened her financial position, yet I remained in the shadows. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence became more glaring. She wasn't around for family dinners anymore, claiming she was too busy. Evelyn still spoke about her as though she were some kind of savior, but the cracks in her illusion were starting to show. One afternoon, I received a call from Richard, the financial consultant I'd enlisted to help Evelyn. "Natalie, I've just finished reviewing Evelyn's account," he said. "She's in a much better place now, but there's something you should know." "What is it?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Her daughter, Lauren, has been funneling money from Evelyn's account to cover her personal expenses. It's been going on for months." The air left my lungs. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Richard replied. "The transfers are small enough to fly under the radar, but they add up. Evelyn might not even realize it's happening." I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Lauren wasn't just neglecting her responsibilities. She was actively sabotaging Evelyn's finances. That evening, I told David what Richard had uncovered. His face darkened as I laid out the details. "This has gone too far," he said. "You've done everything to help my mom, and Lauren's just taking advantage of her." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "But this isn't about Lauren anymore. It's about Evelyn understanding who's really been there for her." "What are you going to do?" he asked. I met his gaze, a newfound determination in my chest. "I'm going to make sure she sees the truth." The next day, I scheduled a family meeting. Evelyn was hesitant and Lauren was predictably late, but I didn't let it deter me. When we were all seated in Evelyn's living room, I handed her a folder containing the financial records Richard had compiled. "What's this?" she asked, flipping through the pages. "It's the truth," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Everything I've done to help you, and everything Lauren's been doing behind your back." Evelyn's eyes widened as she read, her hands trembling. Lauren immediately tried to dismiss it. "Mom, you can't believe this. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad." But the evidence was irrefutable, and for the first time, Evelyn couldn't brush it aside. The silence in the room was deafening as Evelyn flipped through the documents. Her hands shook, her face pale, as the reality of the situation sank in. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her usual confidence slipping. This can't be right," Evelyn stammered, though her voice lacked conviction. "It is," I said firmly. For months, Lauren has been siphoning money from your accounts while you've been struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, I've been the one negotiating with creditors, managing your payments, and ensuring you didn't lose your home. Lauren shot to her feet, her voice shrill. Mom, this is ridiculous. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad because she's jealous of how close we are. I met her glare with calm resolve. This isn't about jealousy, Lauren. It's about the truth. And the truth is, you've been taking advantage of your mother while I've been cleaning up your mess. Evelyn's gaze darted between us, her expression a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Lauren, she said finally, her voice trembling. Is this true? Lauren faltered, her bravado crumbling. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, she muttered. I was going to pay it back. Pay it back with what? I countered, my tone sharp. Another failed scheme? Another excuse? For the first time, Evelyn didn't defend her daughter. She slumped back in her chair, the weight of her favoritism crashing down around her. How could you do this, Lauren? She whispered. I trusted you. I thought you were helping me. Lauren didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The tension lingered, heavy and oppressive. Evelyn looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Natalie, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied, my voice soft but resolute. I didn't do this for thanks or recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do, for you, for the family. But you need to understand that your blind trust in Lauren nearly cost you everything. She nodded slowly, her tears spilling over. I was so wrong about you, she admitted. I've spent so much time praising Lauren that I didn't see what was right in front of me. You've been the one holding this family together all along. Hearing her say those words felt like a release. For years, I'd carried the weight of her dismissal, trying to prove my worth through actions instead of words. Now, finally, she saw me. Not as an afterthought, but as the person I truly was. David reached over and squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with pride. You've done more for this family than anyone, he said. And now they all know it. I smiled faintly, my heart lighter than it had been in years. The truth was out, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. The days following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. Evelyn called several times, her tone softer and more thoughtful than I'd ever heard. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hold on to the distance I'd maintained for so long, but another part, the part that still cared, wanted to believe she was finally ready to change. One evening, Evelyn asked if we could meet for coffee. I need to talk to you, she said. I need to explain. Everything. David encouraged me to go. She's trying, Natalie, he said. This is the first time I've ever heard her admit she was wrong about anything. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, Evelyn was already there, nervously stirring her tea. She looked older somehow, the weight of the last few weeks clearly taking a toll. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I nodded, waiting for her to start. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know how to make this right, she began, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've spent so many years putting Lauren on a pedestal, ignoring everyone else, especially you. I thought I was protecting the family by keeping us close, but all I did was push you away. Her words were raw, unpolished, and surprisingly honest. I didn't expect you to forgive me, she continued, her voice breaking. But I need you to know that I see you now, Natalie. Everything you've done for this family, it's more than I ever gave you credit for. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful for it. I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. Evelyn, I said finally, I didn't step in because I wanted gratitude or recognition. I did it because I care about this family, even when it hasn't always felt like I belonged. But hearing you say that, it means more than you know. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I don't want to be the person I've been, she said. I want to do better. For you, for David, for everyone. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt genuine. And for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page, not as rivals or adversaries, but as two people who wanted the best for the family. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn made small but meaningful changes. She started taking a more active role in her own finances, attending workshops I recommended, and seeking advice from professionals. She also made a point to include me in family conversations, asking for my input and genuinely listening to what I had to say. Lauren, meanwhile, kept her distance. The fallout from the confrontation had shaken her, and while I didn't expect an apology from her anytime soon, her absence gave the rest of us room to rebuild. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just a guest in my own family. I was a part of it. Over time, the family began to feel less fractured. Evelyn's effort to change wasn't perfect, but it was consistent. She checked in with me regularly, sought my advice on matters she would have once dismissed me from, and even began expressing gratitude for the things I did, something I never thought I'd hear from her. One afternoon, as we sat in her living room reviewing her updated financial plans, she looked up from the papers and said, "I don't think I ever thanked you properly, Natalie. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and it saved me." I paused, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "You don't have to thank me, Evelyn," I said carefully. "I just wanted to make sure the family didn't fall apart." She shook her head. "It's more than that. You've been the foundation of this family for years, and I was too blind to see it. That's on me. But I see it now, and I'll never take that for granted again." Her words settled something deep inside me. For years, I'd silently carried the burden of her dismissal, wondering if I would ever be enough in her eyes. Now, for the first time, I felt seen, not for what I could do, but for who I was. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence created space for healthier family dynamics. Without her constant need for attention and Evelyn's unquestioning support, conversations became more balanced. David noticed the change too. "It's nice to come over and not feel like we're walking on eggshells," he said one evening, as we drove home from dinner at Evelyn's house. "It is," I agreed, though I knew it was more than just Lauren's absence. Evelyn's efforts to repair our relationship had brought a sense of calm to the family that I hadn't realized we'd been missing. At work, I found myself reinvigorated. The challenges I'd faced with Evelyn had taught me more than I expected about patience, resilience, and the power of staying true to my values. Those lessons spilled over into my professional life, giving me a renewed sense of purpose. One day, as I was wrapping up a meeting, Evelyn called. "I'm thinking about hosting a family dinner," she said, her tone hopeful. "It's been a while since we all sat down together, and I'd like to make it special. Would you help me plan it?" Her request was simple, but it carried so much weight. "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'd love to." As I hung up, I felt a warmth I hadn't associated with Evelyn in years. She wasn't perfect, and our relationship wasn't magically fixed, but it was moving in the right direction. And for the first time, I felt like I had a place at the table, not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. The family dinner Evelyn planned was unlike any we'd had before. There was a lightness to the atmosphere, a warmth that hadn't existed in years. The dining table was set with care, the food thoughtfully prepared, and the conversation flowed naturally. For once, there was no tension, no subtle digs or favoritism overshadowing the evening. Midway through the meal, Evelyn raised her glass. "I just want to say something," she began, her voice steady but emotional. Everyone fell silent, the clinking of forks and knives stopping as we turned to her. "For years I've seen this family through one lens, one that wasn't always fair," she said. Her gaze shifted to me, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the room. "Natalie, I owe you an apology. I didn't recognize everything you've done for us, for me. But I see it now. You're the reason this family is still standing, and I'll never forget that." A lump formed in my throat, but I managed a small smile. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said softly, my voice wavering. That means a lot. David squeezed my hand under the table, his pride evident in the way he looked at me. After dinner, as the guests began to leave, Evelyn pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her tone earnest. "About Lauren, about me. I let her take advantage of me because it was easier than admitting I'd made mistakes. But I won't let that happen again." Now, hearing her acknowledge the pattern was more than I'd hoped for. "It's not easy to break old habits," I said gently. "But you're trying, and that's what matters." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You've taught me more than I can put into words, Natalie. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to repay me," I replied. "Just keep moving forward. That's all I need." That night, as David and I drove home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The journey with Evelyn hadn't been easy, and there was still work to be done, but we were in a better place, one built on mutual respect and understanding. For so long, I'd sought validation from her, believing that my worth depended on her approval. But now, I realized that I didn't need her to see me to know my own value. Evelyn's recognition was a bonus, not the foundation. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on everything we'd been through. I wasn't just the daughter-in-law anymore. I was a vital part of this family, not because of what I'd done, but because of who I was. And that, I realized, was enough.
Hello, people. I am Jasmine, and this is my story. I will be sharing an event with my soon-to-be ex-husband and mother-in-law. The betrayal and lies are still haunting me, so I thought I should get it off my chest. I have seen multiple posts about people dealing with horrible mothers-in-law and their equally bad sons. I had to face something similar. When I married my husband, Tom, I had no idea he was a big mama's boy. His mother, Vera, was extremely close to him from his childhood. He has been taught that his mother comes first. I mean, I have no problem with him being a mama's boy. However, sometimes Vera's hold over him also suffocated me. After Tom married me, he always said, "Even if you are my wife, my mum is still a priority for me." I hope you understand that, Jasmine. I don't want you to think otherwise. I responded, "I know that, Tom. As long as you respect and value me as well, I have no problems with your closeness to Vera. You are her son, after all." Thank you for understanding, Jasmine. I hope we won't have problems with this in the future. Tom was not joking when he said that Vera was his priority. As the years progressed, it became clear that Vera held an even higher position than me. Tom worked a good job, but spent half his income on her. Vera refused to work and insisted on living on her son's money. I ended up putting more money into our household accounts to make ends meet. When I talked to Tom about this, he said, "How dare you bring this up, Jasmine? I already told you that my mum is a priority. Why are you creating trouble about this? Do you want my mom to starve?" "I never said that, Tom. You're just giving out more money to Vera than necessary. I have tolerated it for so many years, but you need to stop. That will never happen. I have a responsibility towards her, and I will send her whatever money I please. Stay out of this." All this while, I knew that I was fighting a losing battle. We had multiple fights about Vera. It also didn't help that Vera hated me and insulted me at every chance. Hell, Tom was the only one invited to her house for Christmas. I was never allowed. Tom had nothing to say about this. He always left me alone and celebrated with Vera. Things didn't improve even after Tom and I had a child. Ethan was also boycotted from Vera's house because he was my child. Ethan craved his grandma's love when he was young. However, Vera only had insults for him. Tom never protested and merely told us to deal with it. After a while, Ethan and I both gave up pleasing Vera. I didn't want Ethan to grow up among divorced parents, so I never left. However, I later realized my mistake. You see, Tom suddenly left his job when Ethan was about 12 years old. He sat me down one day and said, "I have quit my job, Jasmine. Today was my last day. I've been thinking about leaving for a while. I think it's time. What? Why didn't you discuss this with me? Do you have any jobs lined up? No, I won't be returning to work anytime soon. I feel burnt out and need some rest. You earn enough to support us, so that won't be an issue. By the way, I hope you know that Mum will be moving in with us. You need to take care of her as well. It'll be easy if we don't pay her rent. You've owned this house, so you can let her stay here for free. Who the hell gave you this idea, Tom? Your mom is your responsibility. I want nothing to do with her. That woman literally hates me and Ethan. Why do you think I will house her and feed her for free? She is my mum and your family. You are bound to help her out. I don't want any excuses. Tom and I had multiple fights about this issue. When he finally understood that I wouldn't relent, he stopped asking. Since our house was my inherited property, he couldn't force me to house Vera. Since Tom stopped asking about taking in Vera, I thought he finally got the point. Turns out he was just plotting against me. One day, Tom came back to our house with Vera in a wheelchair. He was gone for a week to Vera's place because he wanted to spend time with her, but I didn't hear from him during the entire time. When he finally showed up, he brought a wheelchair-bound Vera to the house. I let them in, looking confused as hell. Then Tom and Vera told me something shocking. Jasmine, I'm sure you're wondering what happened. Sorry I couldn't reach out to you sooner. Mum got into an accident. I accidentally hit her with my truck when I was pulling into the garage. Unfortunately, she has suffered a lot and has been paralyzed. Oh my God, are you serious? Vera is paralyzed. Yes, Jasmine, it was an unfortunate incident, but I ended up paying dearly for it. Now, I don't know how I can stay alone. Jasmine, since I was the one who caused her to be paralyzed, I have been feeling very guilty about this. Would you mind if she stays here? You know I can't support her right now, and I don't know what to do. I have lots of medical bills too, Jasmine. My son can't do anything for me. If I go for insurance, I would have to file a report against Tom. You know I can't do that. Hearing everything made me both angry and sad at the same time. I was angry at Tom for just springing this on me and being careless. I was also sad for Vera because, while I am not made of stone, I understood I had no choice but to help them out. I thought that it would make us come closer as a family, so I gave Tom some money from my savings to clear Vera's medical debts. I also took her in and let her stay with me. Well, all my hopes for reconciliation came crashing down soon. Vera never changed her mind about me, even after I helped her out. Instead, she and Tom ganged up on me and made my life a living hell. They berated me constantly for being lazy and useless. I was working 40 hours a week trying to keep our finances together. Meanwhile, Tom and Vera did nothing to help. When I asked for help, they said, "How could you ask me for help, Jasmine? I'm a poor disabled woman. I can't do anything for you." I'm not asking for you to help Vera. I'm simply telling you to stop littering everything. I'm getting tired of constantly picking up after you. You won't even use the dustbin beside your bed. Stop attacking my mum, Jasmine. You know she can't move. How dare you tell her to adjust? Why don't you help me out, Tom? You're here all day. I could use some help around the house. I can't keep up with everything after working for so many hours. I have to take care of Mum all day. I don't have time for your chores. Those are your responsibilities, not mine. Make Ethan work with you. I couldn't believe the freaking audacity of Tom. Ethan was already helping me out with all the chores. He had his schoolwork as well. He and I were getting tired of slaving for Tom and Vera, yet Tom never helped out. Vera complained all day long and refused to even do basic tasks that she was perfectly capable of doing. I was tired of working for them. My bank account sat empty, and I had very little savings left. Still, I held myself together because I felt sorry for Vera and Tom. Well, it turns out I was being played for a fool. One day, Ethan approached me when Tom and Vera were not around. He said that there was something he needed to talk about. "Mom, why does Grandma still use a wheelchair? She isn't sick anymore. Why does she need it even now?" "Your grandma is still paralyzed, Ethan. This means she cannot move without the wheelchair. Unfortunately, she hasn't gotten any better. But I see Grandma walking every morning. I thought she had recovered. Why are you saying she can't walk? What do you mean, Ethan? Vera is paralyzed from the waist down. She can't walk, son. You must have mixed it up. No, Mum, it was her. When I asked her how she can walk, she just shushed me and ignored me. She even told me not to tell you. I was immediately alarmed. I had a nagging suspicion that something wasn't right. I didn't have any proof, so confronting Vera was out of the question. But now my son gave me some grave news. I was starting to get very angry. Still, I needed more information and proof, so I said, "Do you have any proof by any chance?" "I need more proof, Ethan." "Yes, I do, Mum. I took a video with my phone. Do you want to see it?" "Show me the video, Ethan. I need to see it right now." Ethan was right. His video did catch Vera walking in the hallways. I was pretty shocked. I couldn't believe my eyes. What was even more shocking was that Tom saw her walking and didn't really look surprised. In fact, he even walked up to her, and they laughed about something in the hallway. I was absolutely furious. They were fooling me for 6 freaking months. I was livid. I immediately saved the footage on my phone and waited to confront them. The next day, when I returned from work, I saw that Tom and Vera were casually talking in the living room. I was pretty enraged, but kept my cool. I decided that it was time to confront them. I sat down beside them and said, "There is something I needed to talk to you guys about." "What is it, Jasmine? Tell us now. Why did you two lie to me about Vera's condition? I know she's not paralyzed and can walk just fine. So tell me, why did you do this?" "What are you talking about, Jasmine? This is ridiculous. You know Mum is paralyzed. Are you accusing her of faking it?" "How dare you accuse me of faking it? You're such a witch, Jasmine. I was right about you all along. You are a heartless woman. Don't lie to me, you two. I have ample proof that Vera can walk. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I also know you know about this, Tom." "This is ridiculous, Jasmine. How can you accuse us like this? I didn't expect this from you. Stop being such a cruel person and making up lies about us." "Well, I am making things up, Tom. As I said, I have proof. Since you won't accept it, I'll show you the proof. Here, watch this." I took out my phone and showed them the footage. They saw it and turned pale. Tom and Vera looked absolutely shocked. Their eyes bulged out of their sockets, and they clearly looked scared. When the video stopped, I calmly put down my phone and said, "So now that I've shown the proof, tell me why you have been lying to me. I want an answer." "Well, Mum was really paralyzed, Jasmine. She only recovered recently. We've been keeping it a secret. We actually wanted to surprise you." Yes, it's still, I need to tell if I can walk like normal. We wanted to wait and tell you the news when we were sure." Nice story you got there, guys. However, I don't believe you one bit. If you want to prove yourselves, I need to see your doctor's certificates. Only then will I accept your words. Tom and Vera looked visibly anxious and started to mutter nonsense about not having a note at the moment. When it became apparent that they had no proof of Vera's disability, I said, "That's it. Now I know everything I needed to know. Since you two can't give me proof, I won't be taking care of you. I want you both out of the house next month. And Tom, I am filing for divorce." "Jasmine, you're overreacting. You don't have to be so drastic in your decisions. We only lied to you because Mum had nowhere to go. Yes, this is all your fault. You were financially abusing my son by not letting him take me in. We had no other choice than to cook up this story. If you had been a little less selfish, we wouldn't have lied to you. Don't you dare put this on me. You worthless son wanted to be a parasite. I accepted because he is my husband, and I loved him. Then he expected me to take you in as well. You are not entitled to my money. You had no right to exploit me like this." Vera and Tom turned on me and started to call me names. They kept insisting that it was all my fault and they didn't deserve to be kicked out. Tom also said that he was entitled to my money, and so was his mother. All that talk made my blood boil. By the time they were done, I had already made my decision. I said, "Enough is enough. I've heard everything I needed to hear. I thought I would kick Vera out and file for separation with you, Tom, but now I'm going for a divorce. You have no right to be my husband. I won't stay with you anymore, and don't even think about taking Ethan. He will stay with me." "You can't divorce me, Jasmine. If you leave me, you'll have to give me alimony. I will also get half of your savings. I'll keep Ethan and take child support from you. That will teach you a lesson." "You have some wild imagination, Tom. First of all, I have already depleted most of my savings on your mother, so you won't have much to claim anyway. Secondly, the judge won't grant you alimony since you quit your job without consulting me. I'll just say that I recorded our entire conversation, so the judge will know you want Ethan's custody only for child support." No, that can't happen. I'll make sure I bleed you dry. Me and Mum didn't go through so much drama for nothing. I will take your money. You just wait. Tom and Vera kept blowing up at me and threatening me with things. They were so stupid that they forgot the part where I said I was recording everything. From all the stories I heard, I knew that recording conversations can be pretty helpful in court cases, so I made sure I recorded and documented everything. After some time, I left them and went to my room. The next day, Tom and Vera tried to act like nothing happened. They actually began to act very sweet towards me, and Tom tried to hug me in the morning. I ignored them and went about my way. I did meet with 2 lawyers for divorce and eviction. After finalizing everything, I went home. Vera, for some odd reason, still used the wheelchair in front of me. Tom also continued the charade, hoping that I would be fooled again. I sent Ethan to my sister's house so that Tom couldn't scare him from revealing the truth. I was pretty concerned for the safety of my child. I stayed back because the house was mine, and I didn't want them to ruin it. A week later, I served Tom and Vera with eviction papers. I also served Tom divorce papers since there was no way in hell that I was staying with them. When they saw the notices, they completely freaked out. They said, "Jasmine, how can you do this to me? I don't deserve this treatment from you. This has to be a joke. I can't believe you would kick out a disabled woman. Jasmine, my son only wanted to take care of me. You are punishing him for nothing. I think we have already established that you are not disabled, Vera. There is no point in keeping up this charade. Even if I'm not disabled, I am old. You should not kick out an old person. God is watching." Well, God also saw how the 2 of you manipulated me and bled me dry. Now it's time for me to take my revenge. As for Tom, he has been a poor excuse for a husband and father. I was staying with him for Ethan, but not anymore. Tom and Vera tried several times to change my mind. However, I never did. I invited my sister over with Ethan so that he could be at my house. Tom and Vera became desperate to seek my forgiveness. I knew that Tom's poor financial decisions left him with no savings, so hiring a lawyer and fighting me in court would be impossible. Vera didn't work either and had no money of her own, so they were both stuck in a deep pit of financial crisis. They feasted on my income, but forgot the fact that I don't take manipulation lightly. Ethan was a teen, but he was smart enough to figure out what was going on in our house. He started to keep his distance from Tom and Vera. The fact that Tom and Vera kept shouting at him also didn't help. They said, "You little crap, this is all your fault. I told you to keep your mouth shut. Does it feel good to have your dad kicked out, Ethan? Is this making you very happy? Dad and Grandma will be out on the streets while you stay comfortable with your mum. How does that make you feel?" "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't want to keep Mum in the dark, so I told her everything. I didn't know that she would leave you." "Shut up, Ethan. You are nothing but a useless child. I wish I never had you. If I didn't have you, I would remain married and stay in this house. You are responsible for our condition. Stop this right now. You have some audacity to scold and berate Ethan when he did the right thing. How can you speak to your child like that?" I was fuming at Tom and Vera's behavior towards Ethan. It scared the living hell out of him. It broke my heart to see him so scared. I threatened Tom and Vera to call the cops if they kept verbally and emotionally abusing Ethan. That shut them up real quick. Later, these incidents actually helped me to get full custody of Ethan. Once the month came to an end, I promptly kicked out Tom and Vera. They did try to throw tantrums until I called the police on them. The police arrived and escorted them out of my house with their things. Finally, Ethan and I were able to breathe in our own house. In the weeks that followed, my lawyers tried to convince Tom to sign the divorce papers. I even offered him some money if he signed the papers for good. Since he was almost homeless and didn't have any money, he begrudgingly agreed. I did lose some money, but I see that as a win. Well, what he got won't be enough to feed him for over 2 months. The custody agreements were pretty smooth. I got full custody because Tom was in no place to house Ethan. Even if he gets a job and demands split custody, I knew Ethan would speak against him. He was still very shaken and is seeing a therapist for his problems. I attended the sessions with him because I didn't want him to feel alone. My sister is also living with us for the time being to help me out with everything. We are also on the lookout to see if Tom and Vera try anything. From what I've heard so far, Tom and Vera had some nasty fights after I kicked them out. How did I know all this? Well, Tom came crying at my door about 2 weeks after getting kicked out. That's actually when I convinced him to sign the divorce. Apparently, Vera turned on Tom and demanded he get a job to feed her. When Tom refused to support her financially, she threw the worst tantrums ever. According to Tom, that made him see just what an idiot he was to me. Trust me, guys, I didn't feel anything towards him. I simply offered him the money and asked for his signature. By then, Tom knew there was no coming back. I have no idea where Vera is right now, but we are being careful. Meanwhile, Ethan and I are trying to get past the fiasco and start our life afresh.
I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, taking a deep breath as Ben's hand squeezed mine reassuringly. The imposing oak door loomed before us, a barrier between me and my future in-laws. This was it, the moment of truth. "Ready, sweetheart?" Ben's warm smile melted away some of my anxiety. I nodded, mustering a confident grin. "As I'll ever be." The door swung open, revealing a tall, distinguished man with Ben's kind eyes. "There you are," he exclaimed, pulling Ben into a bear hug. "And you must be Nora. Welcome, my dear." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," I said, accepting his firm handshake. "Please call me Alan. Come in, come in. Patricia's been fussing all morning." We stepped into a pristine foyer that could have graced the pages of a home decor magazine. Everything was immaculate, from the polished hardwood floors to the crystal chandelier overhead. "Benjamin!" A sharp voice cut through the air. I turned to see a woman descending the staircase, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture ramrod straight. This had to be Patricia. "Hello, Mother," Ben said, his voice tightening almost imperceptibly. Patricia's eyes swept over me, assessing. "So this is Nora." I extended my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Harrison." She barely touched my fingers before withdrawing. "Charmed, I'm sure. Well, don't just stand there. Let's move to the sitting room. I've prepared tea." As we followed her, I caught Ben's apologetic glance. I gave him a small smile, determined not to let his mother's chilly reception dampen my spirits. The sitting room was as immaculate as the foyer, with delicate china teacups already set out. We settled onto the plush sofas, the silence thick with unspoken expectations. "So, Nora," Patricia began, her voice syrupy sweet, "Ben tells us you're from, where was it again? Ohio?" "Indiana, actually," I corrected gently. "A small town outside of Indianapolis." "Ah, yes. How quaint." The way she said it made it sound like anything but. "And what is it you do, dear?" "I'm a pediatric nurse," I replied, my chin lifting slightly. "I've been working at Children's Hospital for the past 5 years." Patricia's eyebrows arched. "A nurse? How noble. Though I always thought Benjamin would end up with someone more ambitious. Perhaps a doctor?" "Mother," Ben warned, his jaw clenching. Alan cleared his throat. "I think it's wonderful, Nora. The world needs more caring people like you." I smiled gratefully at him. "Thank you, Alan." "Yes, yes, very admirable." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Now, Benjamin, have you given any more thought to joining your father's firm? A man in your position should be thinking about his future, especially with a wife to support. Ben's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Actually, Mother, Nora and I are quite happy with our current careers. We support each other equally. Patricia's lips pursed as if she'd tasted something sour. I see. Well, I suppose times are changing. Speaking of change, did you hear about Sarah? The sudden shift in topic caught me off guard. I'd heard Ben mention his older sister, but I hadn't met her yet. What about Sarah? Ben asked, wariness creeping into his voice. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes glittering with barely concealed glee. Well, it seems that her marriage to Mark has finally fallen apart. I always said he wasn't good enough for her. Alan shifted uncomfortably. Patricia, perhaps this isn't the time. Nonsense, Alan. Families should know these things. She turned back to us. It's such a shame, but then again, Sarah always did make questionable choices. The undercurrent of malice in Patricia's voice sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at Ben, seeing the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers gripped his teacup a little too tightly. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Is Sarah okay? Patricia's gaze snapped to me, sharp and assessing. Oh, I'm sure she'll manage. She always does, doesn't she, Benjamin? Though perhaps if she'd listened to me in the first place. As Patricia launched into what was clearly a well-rehearsed critique of her daughter's life choices, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into a minefield. What exactly had happened between Sarah and Mark? And why did I have the sinking feeling that Patricia had played a larger role in their divorce than she was letting on? The cafe bustled with the midday lunch crowd, but I barely noticed the noise. My mind was still reeling from the previous day's encounter with Patricia. I stirred my latte absently, waiting for Sarah to arrive. A tall, slender woman with Ben's warm eyes rushed in, her blonde hair wind-swept. Nora, I'm so sorry I'm late. I stood, smiling. Sarah, it's great to finally meet you. We hugged, and I immediately felt a kinship with Ben's sister. As we settled into our seats, Sarah's expression turned apologetic. I heard about yesterday. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. I waved off her concern. It wasn't your fault. But I have to admit, I'm curious about what happened with Mark. Your mother seemed almost gleeful about your divorce. Sarah's face darkened. Of course she was. She orchestrated the whole thing. My jaw dropped. What? Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. Mom never approved of Mark. He wasn't from the right background, you see. She spent years trying to drive us apart. That's terrible. I gasped. What did she do? Little things at first, backhanded compliments, accidentally excluding him from family events, but then she started spreading rumors. Sarah's voice cracked. She told our entire social circle that Mark was cheating on me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was he? Sarah shook her head vehemently. No, never. But the damage was done. Our friends, even some of Mark's colleagues, everyone looked at us differently. The constant suspicion, the whispers, it tore us apart. My mind raced, connecting the dots. And yesterday, when she brought it up, she was gloating, Sarah finished bitterly, and probably warning you. Warning me? I echoed, confused. Sarah reached across the table, gripping my hand. Nora, you need to be careful. Mom sees you as an outsider, just like Mark. She'll try to push you out, too. My stomach churned. But why? Ben and I love each other. We're happy. That doesn't matter to her, Sarah said, shaking her head. In her mind, Ben deserves someone from our world, old money, social connections. She won't stop until she gets her way. I straightened my spine, anger replacing my initial shock. Well, she's in for a fight. I'm not going anywhere. Sarah smiled sadly. I admire your spirit, but don't underestimate her. She's relentless. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. Mom's insisting on hosting an engagement party next week. I tried to talk her out of it, but she won't budge. I'm so sorry, love. I showed Sarah the message, watching her face pale. Oh, Nora, this is how it starts. What do you mean? The engagement party? It's not for you. It's for her to parade Ben in front of all her society friends' daughters. Sarah's voice was grim. She did the same thing to Mark and me. My head spun. But surely Ben wouldn't. Of course not, Sarah assured me quickly. Ben adores you, but Mom will use every trick in the book to make you look bad and push you away. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Then I'll just have to be prepared. Sarah squeezed my hand. I'll help you. We'll face her together. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Patricia herself. Nora, dear, I do hope you have something suitable to wear for the engagement party. Perhaps we should go shopping? I know the most darling boutique. I stared at the message, my jaw clenching. The seemingly innocent offer was loaded with implications, that I wasn't good enough, that I needed her help to fit in. What is it? Sarah asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. It's starting, isn't it? Sarah nodded grimly. Welcome to the battlefield, Nora. Are you ready? I lifted my chin, a fire of determination burning in my chest. Bring it on! The bridal boutique was a sea of white lace and tulle, but I felt anything but serene. Patricia's voice grated on my nerves as she flitted from rack to rack, pulling out gowns that were more suited to her taste than mine. Oh, Nora, darling, she cooed, holding up a monstrosity of ruffles and beads. This would be perfect for you. It'll hide all those problem areas. I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. Thank you, Patricia, but I was thinking of something simpler. She skipped, shaking her head. But dear, this is your big day. You want to look like a princess, don't you? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. How's it going? Do you need a rescue? I smiled, typing back quickly. Not yet, but stay on standby. Nora? Patricia's sharp voice cut through my moment of relief. Who are you texting? It's rude to be on your phone when we're shopping for your wedding dress. I pocketed my phone, suppressing a sigh. Sorry, Patricia. It was just Ben checking in. Her eyes narrowed. Benjamin knows better than to interrupt important wedding preparations. I'll have to have a word with him about that. Alarm bells rang in my head. That's really not necessary. Nonsense, she waved me off. Now let's try on this lovely gown, shall we? An hour and several uncomfortable fittings later, I emerged from the dressing room in yet another dress I hated. Patricia clapped her hands in delight. Oh, it's perfect, she exclaimed. You almost look like you belong in our world. The backhanded compliment stung, but I held my tongue. Just then the boutique door chimed, and Sarah walked in, looking like a breath of fresh air. Sarah, I called out, relief flooding through me. What are you doing here? I thought you might need some backup, she said with a wink before turning to her mother. Hi, Mom. I hope you don't mind me crashing your shopping trip. Patricia's smile turned brittle. Sarah, dear, how unexpected. I thought you were busy with work today. I rearranged some things, Sarah said smoothly. She turned to me, her eyes widening in mock horror at the dress. Oh, Nora, that's not you at all, is it? I shook my head, grateful for the lifeline. Not really, no. Not. Sarah linked her arm through mine. Come on, let's find something that actually suits you. As we moved away from Patricia, I whispered, Thank you. I was about to lose my mind. Sarah squeezed my arm. I've been there. Don't let her bully you into something you don't want. We spent the next hour finding dresses that actually matched my style. Simple, elegant, and nothing like the overblown creations Patricia favored. When I finally stepped out in a sleek, off-the-shoulder gown, Sarah gasped. Nora, you look stunning, she said, her eyes misting over. I turned to the mirror, my breath catching. For the first time that day, I felt like a bride. Patricia's lips were pressed into a thin line. Well, it's different, but don't you think it's a bit plain for a Harrison wedding? I think it's perfect, a deep voice said from behind us. We all turned to see Ben standing in the doorway, his eyes locked on me with a look of pure adoration. Benjamin! Patricia sputtered. What are you doing here? It's bad luck to see the bride in her dress before the wedding. Ben ignored her, crossing the room to take my hands in his. You look beautiful, Nora. This is the one, isn't it? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Then this is the dress you'll wear, he said firmly, before turning to face his mother. And, Mom, I think it's time we had a talk about your behavior. This wedding is about Nora and me, not your social aspirations. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. Benjamin, how dare you speak to me like that? I'm only trying to help. No, Mom, Ben cut her off. You're trying to control, just like you always do, and it stops now. As Ben led Patricia away for a private conversation, I exchanged a look with Sarah. The battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time, I felt like we might actually win this war. The aroma of roasting chicken filled our apartment as I put the finishing touches on the table setting. This dinner party was my chance to show Patricia that I could be the perfect hostess, despite my quaint Midwest upbringing. Everything looks amazing, Nora, Ben said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You've outdone yourself. I leaned into his embrace, savoring the moment of calm before the storm. I just hope your mother appreciates it. The doorbell rang, shattering our peace. Ben squeezed my hand reassuringly before going to answer it. Patricia swept in, her critical gaze taking in every detail of our home. Well, isn't this cozy? She said, her tone making it clear that cozy was not a compliment. Alan followed, offering me a warm smile and a bottle of wine. The place looks lovely, Nora. As we settled around the dining table, I could feel Patricia's eyes on me, watching my every move. I took a deep breath and began serving the meal I'd spent hours preparing. So, Nora, Patricia began, her voice syrupy sweet, tell me about your family's traditions. I'm sure they must be so interesting. I smiled, determined not to let her get under my skin. Well, we have a lot of wonderful traditions. Every summer, we— Oh, how quaint, Patricia interrupted, not even trying to hide her condescension. I suppose that's what people do when they don't have access to more refined pastimes. Ben's fork clattered against his plate. Mother, that's enough. But Patricia was on a roll. I'm just trying to understand Nora's background, dear. After all, she'll need to learn how things are done in our circles if she's going to be a proper wife for you. My cheeks burned with a mix of anger and humiliation. I assure you, Patricia, I'm quite capable of adapting to new situations. Of course you are, dear, she patted my hand patronizingly. But there's so much you don't know. The social obligations, the charity galas, the proper way to address people of certain standing. It's a lot to learn for someone from your background. Mom, stop it, Ben growled, his patience clearly wearing thin. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I appreciate your concern, Patricia, but I'm confident in my ability to navigate any social situation. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Really? Then perhaps you can explain the proper way to address a duchess at a formal event, or which fork to use for the fish course at a state dinner. That's irrelevant, Ben interjected. Nora doesn't need to know any of that. Oh, but she does, Patricia insisted. That unless you plan on embarrassing the family at every turn. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Enough, Patricia. I may not know which fork to use for fish, but I do know how to treat people with kindness and respect, something you seem to have forgotten. The room fell silent. Alan looked uncomfortable, while Ben stared at me with a mix of surprise and pride. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. How dare you speak to me like that, Benjamin? Are you going to let her disrespect me in this way? To my shock, Ben stood up and came to stand beside me. Actually, Mother, I think Nora's right. Your behavior tonight has been appalling. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I was only trying to help. No, you weren't, Ben said firmly. You were trying to belittle and intimidate Nora, and I won't stand for it anymore. Alan finally spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Patricia, I think it's time we left. As Ben showed his parents out, I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking. What had I done? I'd just confronted my future mother-in-law, potentially ruining any chance of a peaceful family dynamic. Ben returned, kneeling beside me. Nora, I'm so sorry. I should have put a stop to her behavior long ago. I looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and support. What do we do now, Ben? I don't think I can keep pretending everything's okay. He took my hands in his expression serious. We don't. It's time we set some boundaries with my parents, even if it means distancing ourselves from them. My heart raced at the implications of his words. Are you sure? That's a big step. Ben nodded, his jaw set with determination. I'm sure. You're my family now, Nora, and I won't let anyone, not even my mother, treat you this way. As we held each other, I realized we were at a crossroads. The decision we made now would shape our future and our relationship with Ben's family forever. But looking into Ben's eyes, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The tension in the room was palpable as I sat between my parents and Ben, facing Patricia and Alan across the table. We'd decided to have a family dinner to discuss the wedding plans, but Patricia's behavior at our dinner party was still fresh in everyone's minds. My mother, usually the picture of Midwestern politeness, was uncharacteristically frosty towards Patricia. I must say, I was shocked to hear about your comments regarding Nora's background, she said, her voice tight. Patricia had the grace to look uncomfortable. I assure you, I meant no offense. I was merely concerned about Nora's ability to adapt to our way of life. Our way of life? My father's eyebrows shot up. And what exactly is wrong with the way we raised our daughter? Ben squeezed my hand under the table as I took a deep breath. Patricia, I understand you have concerns, but I assure you I'm more than capable of handling any social situation. Patricia's lips thinned. Oh, darling, you say that now, but you have no idea what you're getting into. The expectations, the scrutiny, it's not for the faint of heart. That's enough, Mother, Ben said, his voice sharp. Nora has shown nothing but grace and poise, despite your constant criticism. Alan cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the wedding plans. Have you two decided on a venue yet? I latched onto the change of subject gratefully. Actually, we were thinking of having it at my family's lake house in Indiana. It's beautiful in the summer and... Indiana, Patricia interrupted, aghast. But darling, what about the country club? All our friends and connections will be expecting an invitation. Ben's jaw clenched. This isn't about your friends, Mom. It's about what Nora and I want. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Benjamin, you need to think about your future. The connections you make at events like this can be crucial for your career. My career is doing just fine without using my wedding as a networking opportunity, Ben snapped. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. I could see my parents exchanging worried glances, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before them. I think, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, that Ben and I need to make these decisions for ourselves. We appreciate your input, Patricia, but ultimately, this is our wedding. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning our son against us? Mom, Ben shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. That's enough. I won't let you speak to Nora that way anymore. The room fell silent, everyone stunned by Ben's outburst. I reached for his hand, trying to calm him, but he was trembling with anger. Ben, Alan said softly, son, please sit down. Let's discuss this calmly. But Ben shook his head. No, Dad, I'm done discussing. I'm done trying to please you and Mom at the expense of my own happiness. He turned to me, his eyes softening. Nora, I think we need to have a private conversation. Confused and a little scared, I nodded and followed him out of the dining room and into the kitchen. Behind us, I could hear Patricia's indignant sputtering and my parents' attempts to smooth things over. Once we were alone, Ben took both my hands in his. Nora, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch my mother tear you down day after day. My heart raced. What are you saying, Ben? He took a deep breath. I think we need to consider cutting ties with my parents after the wedding, at least until they can learn to respect you, respect us. I gasped, the weight of his words hitting me like a ton of bricks. Ben, that's a huge decision. Are you sure? He nodded, his expression resolute. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're my family now, Nora. You're my future, and I won't let anyone, not even my parents, jeopardize that. As I stared into Ben's determined eyes, I realized we were standing at a crossroads. The decision we made now would change everything. Our relationship with his family, our future, maybe even who we were as people. But as the sounds of argument drifted in from the dining room, I knew we had to make a choice. Okay, I whispered, squeezing his hands. If you're sure, then I'm with you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Ben pulled me into a tight embrace, and as I buried my face in his chest, I wondered what storm we had just unleashed, and if we were truly ready to weather it. The cafe bustled around us, but Sarah and I might as well have been in our own little bubble. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she clutched her coffee mug. I can't believe Ben's really considering cutting ties with Mom and Dad, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. It's not an easy decision, Sarah, but after everything that's happened... She nodded, a bitter smile twisting her lips. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know better than anyone what Mom's capable of. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes darting around as if afraid Patricia might suddenly appear. Remember how I told you Mom never approved of Mark? I nodded, leaning in. Well, it was more than just disapproval. She orchestrated our entire divorce. My jaw dropped. What? How? Sarah's voice cracked as she spoke. She started spreading rumors. Told everyone that Mark was cheating on me with his secretary. It wasn't true, of course, but people believed her. Our friends, our colleagues, suddenly everyone was looking at us differently. I felt sick to my stomach. That's horrible, Sarah. I'm so sorry. She waved off my sympathy. It gets worse. She hired someone to Photoshop images of Mark with other women, sent them to me anonymously. I was devastated, confused. I confronted Mark, and he had no idea what I was talking about. By the time we figured out what was happening, the damage was done. Our trust was shattered. My mind reeled, trying to process the depths of Patricia's cruelty. But why would she do that? Sarah's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of pain and warning. Because Mark wasn't from the right background, because he threatened her idea of what our family should be. And Nora, she's planning to do the same thing to you. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I overheard her on the phone, Sarah said, her voice urgent. She was talking to one of her society friends, saying how she was going to take care of the Nora problem, just like she did with Mark. She's planning something, Nora. Something big. My heart raced, panic rising in my throat. We have to tell Ben. We have to. Tell me what? We both jumped as Ben appeared at our table, his brow furrowed in concern. Sarah and I exchanged a look, and I knew we couldn't hide this from him. Taking a deep breath, I recounted everything Sarah had just told me. Ben's face grew darker with each word, his hands clenching into fists. When I finished, he was trembling with barely contained rage. I'll kill her, he growled. I'll fucking kill her. Ben, no, I said, grabbing his arm. We can't stoop to her level. Then what do? He demanded. Just sit back and let her destroy our relationship like she did Sarah's? Sarah spoke up, her voice stronger now. We fight back, we expose her for who she really is. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number containing a single image. My blood ran cold as I opened it. It was a photo of me, clearly doctored, in an intimate embrace with a man who wasn't Ben. The accompanying message read, "Such a shame. I wonder what Ben will think when he sees this." My hands shook as I showed Ben and Sarah the message. Ben's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "That's it," he said, his voice deadly calm. "We're done. We're cutting them out completely." "Ben?" I started, but he cut me off. "No, Nora. This ends now. We're getting married in 2 weeks, and my parents won't be there. We'll start our new life without their toxic influence." As Ben pulled out his phone, presumably to call his parents, I exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever happened next would change all of our lives forever. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm that was about to break. We'd made our choice. Now we had to live with the consequences. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, but the knot in my stomach had nothing to do with pre-wedding jitters. Ben and I had made our decision. His parents wouldn't be attending. The peace of the last 2 weeks had been hard-won. But now, as I stood in my childhood bedroom, staring at my reflection in my wedding gown, I couldn't shake the feeling that the other shoe was about to drop. Sarah burst into the room, her bridesmaid dress swishing around her legs. "Nora, you look beautiful." Her smile faltered as she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Nothing, just nerves, I guess." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Hey, it's going to be okay. Ben loves you, and that's all that matters." Just then, my phone rang. The caller ID made my blood run cold. Patricia. Sarah's eyes widened. "You don't have to answer that." But I knew I did. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone. "Hello? Nora, darling." Patricia's voice was syrupy sweet, a stark contrast to her usual clipped tones. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I swallowed hard. "Patricia, it's my wedding day. What do you want?" "Oh, I know, dear. That's why I'm calling. Alan and well, we've been doing some thinking. We realize we may have been a bit harsh in our judgments." My heart raced. Was this really happening? I don't know what to say. "Say you'll tell us where the ceremony is being held. We'd like to be there to support you and Benjamin." For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But then I remembered the doctored photo, the cruel words, the pain in Sarah's eyes as she recounted her divorce. "I'm sorry, Patricia," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But Ben and I have made our decision. The wedding is family only, and, well, you're not invited." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Now, you listen here, you ungrateful little—" I ended the call, my hands shaking. Sarah looked at me, her face a mixture of pride and concern. "You did the right thing, Nora." Before I could respond, there was a commotion downstairs. We rushed to the window to see Patricia's sleek black car pulling up in front of the house. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. She wouldn't. But we both knew she would. Patricia emerged from the car, Alan trailing behind her, looking uncomfortable. "We have to warn Ben," I said, panic rising in my throat. Sarah nodded, already typing furiously on her phone. "I'll tell him. You stay here. Don't let her see you in your dress." I paced the room, my heart pounding as I heard raised voices downstairs. My parents, Ben, Sarah, all trying to reason with Patricia. Suddenly, the door burst open. Patricia stood there, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you exclude us from our own son's wedding?" I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "Patricia, please, this is supposed to be a happy day." "Happy?" she spat. "You've turned my son against me. You've ruined everything." "No, Mom." Ben's voice came from behind her. He stepped into the room, his eyes locked on mine. "You did that all on your own." Patricia whirled to face him. "Benjamin, you can't be serious. This girl isn't right for you. She'll never fit into our world." Ben's jaw clenched. "Then maybe it's time I found a new world, one that includes Nora and excludes your toxicity." Patricia's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she'd done, everything she'd tried to do. "Patricia," I said softly, "I think it's time for you to leave." She looked at me, then at Ben, her eyes wild. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll see. You'll both see what a mistake you're making." As Alan gently led Patricia away, I sagged against Ben, the weight of everything finally hitting me. "Are we doing the right thing?" I whispered. Ben tilted my chin up, his eyes filled with love and determination. "Absolutely. Now, what do you say we go get married?" As we walked hand in hand towards our future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. The war with Patricia might not be over, but today, love had won the battle. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the peaceful morning air of our honeymoon suite. Ben stirred beside me, but I quickly silenced it, recognizing the number. Patricia, again. For a moment I considered ignoring it, as I had for the past week, but something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. "Hello, Patricia," I answered, my voice steady. "Nora, darling," she cooed, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I hope I'm not interrupting your little getaway." I sat up straighter, steeling myself. "What do you want, Patricia?" "Oh, I just thought we should chat woman to woman. You see, I've been thinking about our little misunderstanding." I almost laughed. "Misunderstanding? Is that what you call trying to sabotage our relationship?" Now, she'd skied. "Let's not dwell on the past. I'm willing to let bygones be bygones if you are. All you need to do is convince Benjamin to reconcile with us. After all, family is everything, isn't it?" The audacity of her request made my blood boil. "Family? You tried to destroy your own daughter's marriage. You sent fake photos to break us up. That's not family, Patricia. That's manipulation." "You ungrateful little," she started, but I cut her off. "No, you listen to me now," I said, my voice low and firm. "I've had enough of your games, your insults, your thinly veiled contempt for my quaint Midwestern background." "Well, You never what? Never thought I'd stand up to you? Never imagined I might have a backbone?" I took a deep breath, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You know what, Patricia? I may be from the Midwest, but my family's company is one of the largest agricultural suppliers in the country. That little lake house where we got married? It's part of a 500-acre estate that's been in my family for generations." There was stunned silence on the other end of the line. "But you know what?" I continued. "None of that matters. What matters is that Ben and I love each other. We support each other, and we don't need your approval or your toxic presence in our lives." You can't just cut us out," Patricia sputtered. "We're his parents." "You're right, you are his parents, but that doesn't give you the right to control his life or belittle his choices. Ben has made his decision, and I stand by him. If you ever want to be part of our lives again, you need to take a long, hard look at your behavior and make some serious changes." I could hear Patricia's ragged breathing on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was small, almost broken. I don't know how. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. Start by apologizing. To Ben, to Sarah, to Mark. Seek therapy. Learn to respect boundaries. It won't be easy, but if you truly want to be part of our lives, that's what it will take. There was a long pause. I'll think about it, she finally said, before hanging up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Ben stirred beside me, his eyes full of concern and love. Was that my mother? He asked softly. I nodded, recounting the conversation. When I finished, Ben pulled me into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. You stood your ground, but you also left the door open. That's more than she deserves. I leaned into his warmth, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Do you think she'll change? Ben sighed. I don't know, but what I do know is that we're stronger together. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a team. As we lay there, the morning sun streaming through the windows, I realized that this was the true happy ending. Not a fairy tale where all conflicts magically resolve, but a real, messy, beautiful life where we choose each other every day. Patricia might never change. She might never be the mother-in-law I'd hoped for. But that was okay, because I had Ben and Sarah and a whole new family that accepted and loved me for who I was. And in the end, that was all that mattered.